Magic coin flips and more up next on Sports Bar. Welcome to Season 3 of Sports Bar. Our normal host, David Jackson, will not be with us this time, so I'm taking his spot for now. Aside from me, we have 2 out of 3 of our normal panelists. We have Ashton, now Marquis, used to be Schlachter, and we have Travis Stanley. All right, guys, so we got a lot of sports to talk about. We're a little late on this, but since this is the first episode of the season, let's go ahead and just talk about the BCS Bowl, Clemson, Alabama. Just talk about some things that you saw that you wanted to touch on. Me personally, I thought Clemson had it, the undefeated team that was never down in the fourth quarter. Alabama came back, though. What are your opinions on the game?
Well, first of all, I think it was one of the best championships that we've seen in a while. I was really, really happy to see that it wasn't, one team was down by an impossible amount or, it wasn't a bad game in any way. I felt like both teams really came out and played well, which is kind of a weird thing to say you're happy to see for such an important game, but a lot of times it happens where, it starts to slant one way and you can't really, nothing changes. But, overall, I think Alabama deserved to win that game. I think that they fought as hard as any team could possibly fight. And, I think it was Saban's year. If he was gonna take it home, this was the year and this was the team that he was going to do it with. He had one of the best front sevens that he's had ever at Alabama. He had the Heisman winner. There was a lot going for him that would have been ridiculous if he hadn't won at this point. And I was kind of surprised that people weren't giving them more credit than what they were being given before the game.
Alabama, like you said, does have the Heisman Trophy winner on their team. However, I don't think there's any debating that Deshaun Watson was the best player on the field in that game. And if you would have told me, or I think if you would have told most people that Clemson was going to score 40 and lose, that would be a little hard to believe, just considering the way most people thought that game was going to play out. If Alabama doesn't have the onside recovery and then also that run back for a touchdown off the kickoff, Clemson probably wins this game. And even with the kickoff return for a touchdown, if they don't recover that onside kick, Alabama probably loses this game because, that was really the turning point because, you have Clemson was ahead previous that drive. They score, and no one was able to stop the other. So it was really it looked like a situation of, okay, who was going to have the ball last kind of situation. So that gave Alabama that one extra possession they needed to kind of, get the edge in that game. But certainly, like you said, it was a great national championship game, somewhat reminiscent of the Texas USC game with Vince Young and Reggie Bush and, those two squads. But I would have liked Clemson to have won the game just because they played Appalachian. You could say that one of our 2 losses came to the national champion. And also, I'm somewhat tired of the SEC, particularly Alabama. That's 4 in the last 7 years. It would have been nice to buck that trend, but certainly a great job by the Crimson Tide.
Well, going back to what you were saying when you said that Alabama came back and took that edge, it's just been proven throughout the season that that's what Alabama does, and Clemson hasn't really had that close of a fourth quarter game all season. They've always entered the fourth quarter ahead. Now a fun stat for you is Clemson in the fourth quarter has put up 90 points on their opponents.
Really? Oh my God.
Their opponents have put up 90 points on them, 99 points on them though. So they've been losing in the fourth quarter battles. A lot of that can go to just them being ahead by so much that they don't really care that much. However, Alabama has put up 114, whereas their opponents have put up 64 on them in the fourth quarter. And that came back again in this game, where in the fourth quarter they shone, Clemson sort of fell.
Yeah, well, the only game that I can really think of that Clemson was really tested in a big way was that Notre Dame game. It was in Clemson, and the weather was just terrible. I think Clemson did enter the fourth quarter with a lead. It was a very slim lead, and that game really came down to the wire. But I agree with you. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Clemson was going into most of those quarters with a lead, but that, that probably isn't the best preparation you can have for a national championship kind of game where, you do need to be battle tested in the fourth quarter and have plenty of games that mean something in the fourth quarter during the regular season to get you ready for the playoff, other than maybe, one game, whereas Alabama, playing in the SEC, playing in the SEC West particularly, had that duck of a game against Ole Miss, which I think really helped them. Kind of much like the Carolina Panthers, for me at least, I was happy that they dropped the game against the Falcons. Well, I think some Alabama fans might be somewhat happy, especially now looking back on it, saying it was nice we dropped that game against Ole Miss because it does help prepare yourself for that kind of game.
It's a stamina thing. I mean, it's all about, can you last throughout the fourth quarter, or are you going to lose it? And Clemson hadn't been tested to see if they could truly go that distance in the fourth quarter. So, it's definitely about preparation for sure.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you did point out was the Panthers losing to the Falcons. We sort of learned from that. But what I want to make a point on, transitioning over to the NFL, is the fact that they did not score in the second half against the Seahawks. All 31 of our points were in the first half. We cannot keep that trend up if we want to beat the Cardinals. And if we do beat them, Peyton Manning or Tom Brady is going to be the opponent in the Super Bowl. We can't have a scoreless second half. And I mean, they've sort of fallen into that trend of they'll get up and sort of put on cruise control. But how do you think that's going to affect them in the long run?
Well, I mean, certainly, like you said, you can't have second halves where you just don't score, no matter how many points you score in the first half, especially against an offense, like the Seahawks. I think we were somewhat lucky to win that game, given the offensive performance in the second half. And that happens with so many squads where, it's natural. You get up, you get in a big lead. Even if you're telling yourself, we can't let up, we can't let, our foot off their neck, it's going to happen. It just does. So the fourth quarter is where you need to still be able, even if you have that third quarter where you're still, in that sleepwalk kind of mode from having that big lead, you still need to be able to at least put one drive together. So I was a little disappointed, I guess, in the Panthers that we couldn't at least maybe put 38 on them to really distance, ourselves, because that game, even though I was never really worried in a big way, just because all the Panthers really needed to do was just take some time off the clock and make it hard on the Seahawks. Worst case scenario, we maybe play for overtime, which honestly the Panthers would have probably lost considering the way the offense was playing. But going forward against the Cardinals, Carson Palmer in that offense with those wide receivers certainly can score. So, Rivera and Cam Newton in that offense needs to address that issue.
Well, Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald have, I think, coming into the last game that they played, Larry Fitzgerald had only 3 drops on target. When Carson Palmer got him the ball, he does not usually drop it, and that's scary. He's going to be lined up against Josh Norman, who's a really good cover safety, or cornerback, sorry. But he's usually pretty good at getting them to not catch the ball, hitting it out of their hands and stuff. But Fitzgerald has some vice grips. He's not going to be letting them go. So he might not get away from Norman and not run down the field, but they'll be getting some solid yards, just sort of inching down the field. Do you think that's something to worry about?
It's definitely something to worry about. Anything coming up against Cardinals, there's things to worry about there across the whole board. But, they need to be careful about what they're letting happen on the other side of the field, because they get to this point where they're so dominant in the offense for a while, and the defense starts to slip off, and then the offense slips off because the defense is it rolls really, really quickly, and it starts to pick up speed. And I think that's what happened this week was, they let the Seahawks get on the board once, and then all of a sudden it was twice, and then it was 3 times, and it just seems to really get the ball rolling, and they struggle to stop it. So it's not that I think that that's going to be, Fitzgerald's going to make this huge multiple playmaking, game-making type plays, but I think that if he gets one big one, then all of a sudden they're going to pick up a little bit of steam, and then something else is going to happen. So it's more that I feel like that can really start something that I don't know if the Panthers can stop, because they really do kind of get in their own way a little bit. I think that they sometimes get complacent, and they start to think, I don't know, at least in my opinion, they seem like they start to slow down and they start to not get quite as, they're not pounding the way that they are supposed to be doing and the way that they were in the first quarter and the first half. So,
well, with Josh Norman on Fitzgerald, I mean, obviously he's a great player. He's somewhat the anti-Ted Ginn that you're talking about. I mean, he has great hands. Poor Ted. He gets open a lot. He's quick, but I wouldn't trust him with my baby. I think someone, a prominent NFL player, said that, and I totally agree. But Larry Fitzgerald is still the kind of player who maybe you limit him to 2 catches, but as you saw at the very beginning of overtime in their game against the Packers, if he gets 1 catch, he certainly has the talent to take it the distance. Yards after catch for him are a huge part of his game. So that is what needs to be limited. And really the only way you can do that is make sure you gang tackle. So you don't want Norman, as good as he is, out on an island with Fitzgerald and just them two going down the sideline, because if he goes up, makes that catch, there's no one out there. So I would imagine we play more zone kind of looks against Fitzgerald in that particular instance to limit those kind of things.
Well, I was going to say, you were talking about him out on an island, which he normally is. He's over there by himself, but the Cardinals have been lining up Fitzgerald more on the inside, trying to get the slot receiver look to him, trying to just pick up those small yards. Not really something that Norman's dealt with a whole lot. He's been going up against Dez and people like that, just running down the field, doing dig routes, things like that. The zone would really help out with that, with Davis and Kuechly in the middle, because Norman, as good as he is, sort of the middle area is not his forte. Yeah. So I think what you were saying is about the zone would probably help. Yeah, well, I mean, you can't help but just get kind of clustered sometimes there in the middle of the field, and Norman isn't small, but he's certainly not the largest guy on the field, and no cornerback is. So hopefully Kuechly and Thomas Davis will be able to help them being both very athletic. You saw a great play by Kuechly.
Oh yeah,
I
can't exactly remember who was the wide receiver, maybe Baldwin in the game last night or yesterday, that is. But he was 5 yards away and came back and really made a nice athletic play. So it'll take that kind of play out of Kuechly to help limit Fitzgerald.
Now, while we're on the topic of the Cardinals, let's just go ahead and say, how do you guys feel about the coin flip that happened? Do you think he should have re-flipped it or just left it as is?
I think that the whole, controversy of it, I think that that's a little bit of the press and everything just trying to make something out of what, honestly, in my opinion, wasn't a law. I think the ref was completely right in the fact that it didn't flip in the air, therefore it's not truly a coin flip, so he flipped it again. And I know that there's been, some questioning by Rodgers and that about, well, he didn't let me call it again, and I would have said heads if he had let me, but in the end, he can say that as much as he wants. It's hard to know if that's true or not. I mean, hindsight's 20/20. So I think that the ref did it the way he should have. I think that was the fairest way to play the game, and it just kind of ended up that it was something that made a big difference in the end, but I don't think it was because of the controversy of the flip. I think it was just because it was a big coin flip in the way the game came out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It is a coin flip. If the coin does not flip, you need to re-flip the coin to make sure it does flip. However, I do think it's controversial just because I don't like the rule of overtime, because whoever gets that ball first, that really does matter in the NFL.
It does.
So that does make the coin flip matter. So obviously you do have that controversy surrounding the flip. But I would really like to see the rule change to at least give the other team one possession. If the Cardinals they came down and scored a touchdown, at least give the Packers one possession to tie the game.
Take away that one possession unless a touchdown scored.
And
take away the touchdown portion of it.
Yeah, and I even got those rules confused sitting in the stands for one of Appalachian's game this year against Troy, because I'm so used to that letdown of the NFL rule that Troy comes down, scores a touchdown. I am just crushed because I think we'll lose that game. And then I'm like, oh yeah, the college football has it right. We get another possession. So yes, you might get really long games that way.
But I think it matches up a little bit better.
And I think it would be just as exciting because
you get to watch
the
more
NFL
football,
is all about excitement. So I think that rule needs to be changed.
No, I definitely agree with you. There's just something about it. If you score, the game's over. That's not really fair unless there's no time left on the clock. If there's still time left in overtime, you still give them a chance. Now, if they don't get that touchdown within the clock, that's sorry. So I mean, it should be down to strategy. Like you can run out the clock in overtime and then score, run out the clock and get that field goal, do whatever. But I agree with you. I think there should be a chance for both teams.
Yeah, well, and it gives the opportunity for these weird, coin flip or ref-related controversies to happen because of it. If that wasn't the case, then the coin flip wouldn't have been as big of a deal as it was because it wouldn't have made such a. So I think that the rule itself just gives the opportunity for there to be these, things that will change the game that have nothing to do with the players actually playing on the field. It's all about, what the ref says, what happens with the coin flip, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so coin flip controversy, whatever, we'll move past it. We've already sort of discussed the Cardinals-Panthers game. The other big one is going to be Brady versus Manning. Two pretty solid teams coming in here. What are your thoughts on who you think is going to come out with the win in those? In that.
As much as I want to say the Broncos, I think the Patriots are gonna come out on top. I think that they've just proven that they are a superior team. I think that Brady seems that he can do very little wrong on the field. Belichick clearly's got whatever he's doing is working. And I mean, with like Gronk in the back, there's so many people out there that are going to make a difference. And as much as I would love because I still very strongly think that this is Peyton's last season. Okay. Anyone who says differently, I think at this point it's just wishful thinking. And I would love to see him go home with a ring or at least a chance at a ring, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, if it does, great, but I just think that he doesn't have the weapons that Brady's got on the field with him.
Especially with Gronk back.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, certainly if Peyton loses this game, no shame in that.
Yeah.
If this is his last game and they lose this, going out in the AFC Championship game at that age, that's some rarefied air.
Yeah.
Not many people, retired on that game, and even if they do win that game, I think only maybe one or two quarterbacks have ever retired with the Super Bowl being their last game.
Yeah.
So Peyton, I mean, he was 21 for 37, 222 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. I mean, he didn't have a terrible game necessarily, but it's not the kind of game that really wins you playoff games.
It wasn't a Peyton Manning kind of game.
It wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, there was no real essence of kind of closing that game out, if not for the Steelers kind of handing them a few. They probably don't win that game. So I really hope this is Peyton's last season because he is too good for him to go out on a year where he's just not himself at all.
Yeah, well, he's too good to go out on a major injury, which is what I'm
Yeah.
seeing is happening. I think if he tries to pull it out for another season, then we're going to see him like we did when he left the Colts. We're going to see him on the field with some, monstrosity that's happened to him that everyone's questioning his health. At that point, go out on the high, not the, possible low that could be next season. I think it's just too much of a risk.
Do you think if Brock gets healthy enough, and let's say worst case scenario, Peyton is having, Peyton throws 3 picks in the first 3 possessions, but it's still kind of a game. Do you think they pull Peyton for Brock in the AFC Championship game?
If it's still a game,
I think they might, but I think that would be a terrible way for Peyton to go out.
Yeah.
Him riding the bench.
It would be really hard. I definitely, if it's still a game at all, I mean, if they're a drive or even, 2 scores away, I think they'll try to ride them into it. But, I mean, if they start to really get down, if it goes to 3 scores, 4 scores, I see him coming out. And and that stinks, and I'm hoping that won't happen. But I could see it happening if they really feel like, we need to get something done now, especially if they start to really trail in the first half or even into the third quarter. I think that they'll say, we've got time to get something done. Sorry, we wish you could help. Hopefully you'll play in the Super Bowl.
Well, you wouldn't have the same kind of optimism, I think, now with Peyton Manning going into that game, maybe at halftime, that you did a few years ago with them playing the Seahawks. I mean, because at halftime of that game, things weren't looking up, but that was a younger version of himself, and he had just a record-setting year that year.
Yeah, younger, healthier.
Exactly. Certainly things now are, a surgery ago, 2 surgeries ago. Certainly things are
Who knows how many shots ago? There's a lot going on.
Exactly.
Now, okay, so y'all were saying you were leaning towards Tom Brady taking it, but you want to see Peyton in there. As Panthers supporters, fans, whatever you want to call yourselves, who would you want to go up against?
Brady.
Yeah.
Certainly Brady, just because that I
The rematch?
still, yeah. I haven't got over that. I mean, I was a very young person at that time, but that really helped solidify the fact that Tom Brady is, just a greasy,
deflates balls.
Yeah,
and all that
exactly.
stuff.
I don't mean that. I mean, Tom Brady's a terrific player, but certainly I feel like most of Panther Nation would rather get a shot at Tom Brady because he is seen as the enemy. I mean, and being that good for so long, you can't help but be seen as the enemy. And if Peyton Manning won on his last season, I mean, that even if the Panthers make the Super Bowl and lose on a last-second touchdown, I would still be somewhat happy for the guy. I mean, that would be just poetic.
It's almost at that point you're like, well, I want my team to win, but like if they don't win, like that'd be really nice for him, and that's nice. Like it takes away the amount of competition that you really want to see. Plus, and as a Colts fan, I would just really like to see Brady kind of get it stuck to him by a team that everyone keeps saying, they're not as good as they look like. As people are saying they are. I would really like him to just get it from a team that isn't supposed to be as good as they've clearly proven that they are.
From the worst undefeated team in the NFL
exactly.
for like
it would just be really nice to be like, they were the ones who went undefeated longer than you did, and now they've won the Super Bowl. It's a very vengeful kind of thought, but and it kind of comes down to, I think that would prove to everyone. I say this, there'll still be doubters even if they did win, but that they belonged in the Super Bowl, and they earned that ring, because I think that there's still a group of people who said, well, it was an easy season. They haven't played anyone, even though they played pretty much everyone. But
I mean, as a Panther fan, going into the playoffs at 15-1 and knowing you have home field advantage, I mean, to me, well, I still had tempered expectations because I'm a Panther fan, and we
kind of have to.
We've seen some up and downs. So to me, the minimum requirement or whatever for me to be happy about this season was making the NFC Championship game. So at least we did win one playoff game and have made this game, and there's certainly no shame in losing to the Cardinals if that were to happen.
No, they're a great team.
Well, I mean, they're the second best team after us.
Exactly. I mean, they were the 2 seed. If we'd have lost, they would have been hosting this game. But at 16-1, you definitely want to. You want to play for that Super Bowl.
Yeah. This is the year.
We were talking, before the show about Norman, and they'll probably try to keep him, but you got to give him his money. That's what happens after Super Bowl years. I mean, you as a Ravens fan, you know that. Flacco got that massive contract. The rest of the team suffers, but I mean that's just the way it has to be in those kind of situations. So.
Well, it's hard when you've already got these massive contracts for parts of the team.
I think this is the year, this is the window. If they're going to win it within the next at least 2 or 3 seasons.
If not 5.
But it's got to get done this year.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on from NFL, because we do have a little under 5 minutes left, let's just touch on the NBA for a bit. The All-Star games are coming up on Valentine's Day. Right now, I believe that Kobe has the most votes because it's supposedly his last season. Everyone wants to see him in here, followed by the reigning MVP, Steph. Now, Steph and the Warriors are off to a historic start. They had the best start in NBA history, and they're trying to catch up with Michael Jordan's 95-96 Bulls. So I guess let's touch first. Let's just talk about the Warriors for a bit. How do you see their season going? Do you think they're going to actually make it to 74 and something?
74 and 10.
Yeah, there it is.
I mean, well,
73 and 10.
Yeah, 73 and 10. I mean,
well, if they make 74 and 9, then I mean, even better, right?
I think they certainly can. I mean, you look in their 3 losses so far this year. Steph was injured in one. Klay Thompson was injured in another, and Draymond Green was injured in that last one. With everyone healthy, which is hard to do throughout an entire NBA season. But with everyone healthy, that team hadn't lost a game. And I think they can sustain that because they are just that much better than everyone else. I hate to say it. I was watching them play the Hornets a few weeks ago, and it was honestly just like it was like watching, or I just wanted to throw my head against the wall because it was so
very
frustrating.
upsetting.
It really was. I mean, I'm speechless because it was very upsetting. The poor Hornets, we would pull within 5. And then, Curry would go on a flurry of threes, and you're down by 15.
Oh, that's a good one.
And, a minute and a half.
That's good.
And you're down by 15. And that's, I guess that's the nature of today's NBA, particularly with Golden State Warriors. Yeah. But they're just so versatile. I mean, Draymond Green, I thought he got overpaid before this season.
He's earned it.
But he certainly, he's Mr. Triple-Double.
Yeah.
And coming out of Michigan State, watching him play, I thought you're very one-dimensional. You're a big man who can shoot, but I don't even know where you play on an NBA roster. I mean, you're not a small forward, you're not a power forward, and really he still isn't. But he just really fits on that team because he can pass the ball, he can stretch the defense. He's got great vision. So yeah, I mean, if any team can match or best that record. Set by the Bulls, and that was a terrific team. Mm-hmm. I think these Warriors have a chance.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that this is the first team that we've seen in a while that I think has a chance at the record. I mean, even has a shot. I mean, I think that it kind of comes down to everything has to come together at the right time with the right people and the right coaches and everything. And I think that if someone's going to do it in the next 5 years, 10 years, it means hard with NBA to go out that far, but I think that they're the ones who have it. I think that they have just this right mesh of players that everything seems to be working in this almost magical realm that they can do almost no wrong. And it's like you were saying, it's kind of men with boys out on the court. It was, to me, I mean, the Hornets game was almost reminiscent of the UNC Appalachian game, which I watched. And
that game was closer.
As a young Roy Williams
than the
today,
Hornets.
Yeah. But no, it just. They look like they belong in an entirely different tier than any team that they play. And the few losses they've had, like you said, there was a major injury involved, and they didn't look like their normal team. So,
sadly, we're not going to get to the All-Star game. We do have to call it here. We can touch on next time, though. We have a few weeks before it happens. So.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Promise.
A pinky promise that one. All right, guys. So thank you for watching. As always, I'd like to invite you to leave your comments, questions, concerns, all that at www.watchapptv.com. Until next time, I'm Robin Palmer.